Hello, and welcome back to iCIMS Fireside Chats. In this series, what we try to do is bring on SMEs in the industry to answer the questions that keep you up at night. In this episode, we have the iCIMS Chief Product Officer, Eric Connors, and he's going to answer all the questions that we have about creating a responsible AI framework. Let's check it out. All right, Eric, welcome to Fireside Chats. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much.
Good, good. Now, I will tell you that one of the things that I was excited about whenever I joined, let me back up. Before I joined, I was a little apprehensive with all of this AI and recruiting topic. It's a fun topic, but it's also heated. And then we've got this other one that's looming out there, which is AI governance. And I had the opportunity to hear you go through our responsible AI framework. So I thought that it would be great if you could just kind of walk through the four pillars for the audience.
Yeah, sure. So, we have been in the AI space for a really long time, and we've been doing this for many, many years. And the program, the Responsible by Design AI program has been in existence really since the very early days of our forays into AI. Um, it's a system that looks and feels similar to privacy. Most companies, modern companies, certainly most enterprise software companies have some sort of privacy by design program. And it's modeled in a very similar way, but it's not necessarily just about consumer privacy. It's about the ethics of using AI and where to use AI, et cetera. And so based on that, it starts with a code of ethics. That's the sort of bottom layer, if you will, the foundational layer of the program. This is where we basically build best practices. We discuss and document things that we are going to do, things that we're going to focus on, and um, areas that are not areas that we want to explore, et cetera. Um, it layers on top of that code of ethics an internal governance program. And what this is really a set of executives that sit on a panel and evaluate new forays into AI for its adherence to the code of ethics. It talks about how models are changing and whether those models are changing for the better or by as they change, are they starting to introduce new risks that we need to be managing and thinking about? And so that is the second piece of the pillar. So this is sort of the governance part of the equation. The third layer of the program is the responsible by design program, and this is where we are actually training people on what does it mean to use responsibility in the design work of new AI solutions. What are the expectations that we have? What are the code of ethics? How do you manage this? What processes do you need to go through as you're introducing new AI programs, new AI models, and changing potentially our posture around certain elements of AI and where AI is used. And then sort of the overarching piece of the puzzle is the global compliance framework. And that is an evolving area. When we started to build this program, unlike privacy, which is highly regulated, there was no regulations for AI at that stage. That is changing. There's new laws that are coming into effect in EMEA, in Colorado, in other areas of the country here in the United States that are providing guidance and regulatory frameworks that we're going to have to live in. And so as those evolve, we are modifying this overarching program to comply with those requirements as they evolve.
Makes sense. So just a quick recap. It is based on code of ethics, global compliance, internal governance, and then responsible by design. And that's kind of how we run all of our AI through that those each of those four pillars. Is that
Yep,
right?
that is correct. That is correct.
So the other thing that surprised me whenever I joined is that we had the TrustArc certifications. So that's a pretty big deal. And I think we're one of the only ones that have it in the industry. If I'm not familiar with what that certification is, can you just walk through why that's important? Maybe pull the curtain back a little bit and tell everyone what we had to do to go and get certified because it wasn't easy.
Yeah. So it's effectively a third party audit, just like any sort of audit function. that evaluates how effective your program is. So there's audits that come for finance, there's audits that come through for ISO compliance, et cetera. This is a new program that was created specifically for AI. It's one of the first of its kind. And we felt it was really important that we do the work necessarily to evaluate ourselves against a third party standard as a way of evaluating the effectiveness of our program. I think we felt going into the program that it was effective, but there's no better way to test that than having a third party come in and evaluate that. And if nothing else, they're going to tell you where you fall down and move on. The good news for us is we pass, so that's good. That means we have a good program in place. But all of these external audits come in with new ideas that help us improve the program over time. But this is an evaluation of things like documentation and things like how do we keep the human in the loop and how do we have audits and traceability around these things. What are we doing are we doing adequate bias detection? So as models drift over time, we check for bias on a regular basis. That is a key part of the evaluation and criteria that they are looking at as well. So it's great validation for us. It's a really cool program, and I believe there's going to be more and more companies that should really ask the question about whether the vendors that they do business with are complying with that sort of third-party audit, just like you might for ISO or any other program that you think from a quality perspective is important.
Makes complete sense. And this is, the thing that I want to kind of pull out is it sounds like, this is something we're going to have to maintain, but they're also helping us remain relevant because this whole landscape is, even though I hate using that word now that AI has ruined the term landscape, but it has really changed the whole governance landscape. It's changing so fast.
Yeah, and privacy is a big part of it as well. You can't have good AI governance without good privacy governance. You need sort of both components. But I do think this is an important step in the process because it's anybody can put things on a slide and talk about what they do, but when you get somebody from the outside looking at it and saying, "No, this is good stuff," that means a lot. And so I do think this is going to be more and more valuable. This sort of third party evaluation is going to be more and more valuable over time.
So let's put you in the practitioner seat. You're looking for a new piece of tech in the talent space. What are some questions that you would need to ask to make sure that they do have some type of a governance model around AI? Do you have any suggestions for someone that's in the market?
Yeah, I think asking some basic questions like, how do you decide whether AI is appropriate in this? Um, I think as technology evolves, there are fewer and fewer problems that can't be solved with technology. And more important question to be asked is, should you solve that problem with technology? And so, you know, that code of ethics that I talked about, that is what it's talking about. That is what it's helping us define is what problems should we be solving? And how far down the path should we go before making sure that humans are involved in the process. So, um, you know, responsible by design as it takes the shape of, in one classic example for us is the sourcing agent. And what the sourcing agent does is it basically, you open a job requisition and it asks you some questions. Do you want us to automatically source candidates from your existing pool? If the answer to that is yes, then an agent will operate on your behalf behind the scenes. But it doesn't just start, it asks you more questions. How many candidates do you want me to find? Do you want to automatically reach out to this? So there's an interaction that happens so that that human is in control. And then as that agent is executing, that agent is actually spewing out exactly what it's doing. And so you can stop it at any time. You can ask it to continue. You can see exactly who it's reached out for. You can see what decisions it's making and why. And that is how like responsible AI comes to life. And so you're looking for solutions in the market that have the idea that it is assisting the humans involved in the process. It's making them more effective, but it's never causing them to lose control. It's never a black box. It's never a place where you don't know what's happening behind the scenes, and you don't have a record of what has happened in the past. So you're looking for those basic things. And I think a lot of these programs, if they do exist, they got started basically as model management. So before you push a model into production, you would have to go through some sort of committee. It was an approval process for model changes, or new model introductions. With this new technology, those programs have had to evolve because when you're not using your models, that doesn't work anymore. If you're using ChatGPT, it's the latest model for some component of your solution, you have to answer the question, how am I governing what ChatGPT is getting access to? How am I governing what ChatGPT is leveraging? How am I governing that the output that ChatGPT is coming up with is effective? And so, if you can't answer those questions effectively, then the use cases that you need to use those on has to be by nature significantly fewer, because you have to use it in a safe place. And so, that is what the sorts of answers that you're looking for as, you look at conversational AI. Where is that data coming from? How do you know that you have permission to use that data? What sort of internet data are you using? How do you test for things like model drift? And how do you test for things like bias? And how do you test for false answers and answers that don't make any sense? What are your procedures around those? And like, if they can't answer those questions, then they probably don't have necessarily the most robust program, and then that puts you at risk as you use those solutions.
No, so that's great roundup. And I do think that one of the, especially early on, I think it's evened out a little bit. But one thing that I was seeing a lot in the TA world is, oh, let's just drop this AI in, and then they were surprised when it created all of these issues on the back end. So I do, I think it's very admirable that we started with let's talk about our responsible framework and then start building. So if anyone had, let's just say they were totally geeking out on this, or they're in the middle of a buying process and need some additional information, do you have any areas like what's your go-to source for information to stay relevant and up to date on AI governance? Do you have any?
Yeah, so I think this is an area that is evolving. There is a lot of regulatory evolution that's happening right now. So it is an area that you have to stay up to speed on the regulatory framework. The EU seems to be the furthest ahead. In the United States, it's a variety of states, probably led by Colorado. Those are two great places to stay in touch with how the regulatory framework is evolving and what requirements everybody's going to have to live under. Um, I would say though that the all of these large language models, whether you use Copilot, ChatGPT, or what, like, ask some questions. It's got actually great content around this. And so it is uh, if nothing else, those tools are a great place to have a conversation. And this is a great topic to have a conversation about, because it is, the technology is changing and the requirements are changing at a rapid pace, and also best practices are evolving. And so, again, if you're dealing with vendors that are not necessarily up to speed on these things, they're starting at the back of the race, and
Yeah.
they didn't necessarily get going at the gun. And so they're going to be well behind. So the more versed you are in the topic, the better. But this is not, unfortunately, an area where you could just take this class. It's just
No.
evolving too fast and the content is changing too rapidly. So, I think if you had budgeted last year for a class this year on AI, you'd be talking about machine learning and the rest of the world would be talking about something different at this stage. So, unfortunately, we're not at that stage where it's, ready-made content. It's a lot of searching and dabbling. And I do think that, the LLMs of the world are actually a great place to have that conversation and have an ongoing dialogue with them about what's going on. But I do think the regulatory place is where this is going to evolve to. The rules and regulations are going to evolve here quite rapidly, would be my guess, over the next 2 years. And that is where I would pay the most attention, and then start thinking about how to ask questions of the vendors that you do business with about how they're complying. What are they thinking about that? Why do they think they don't comply? or don't need to comply. Those are the questions that I would be asking along the way.
Fantastic. That's great advice. The only piece of advice that I could add is that if you are trying to do some research on an LLM, make sure that you ask it in its answer to cite the sources. So that way you can actually go and look at it. As an HR person, I've been burned by that. So I learned it once. It was not fun. But ever since then, I make sure that I can
It
actually go
it
and
does
look
give
at the
you wrong
document.
answers. It does
It
give you
does.
wrong answers. Very convincing wrong answers. So
Well, yeah. Oh, I was charging up a hill, thought that I had all of the data, and then I was like, let me just go and check the sources, and they were not good sources. So just my only little tip that I can add to Eric. So, but this has been a fascinating conversation. You have wrapped a lot of information up in a nice 15-minute little bow. I truly appreciate it. And if you are interested in following Eric, he is alive and active on LinkedIn. It is Eric Connors. And then also too, I'm sure that I'm going to have him do a couple of spotlight LinkedIn newsletters, and he just found that out right whenever you did. So join us again for our iCIMS Fireside Chats, and we will see you next time.
thank you very much. I appreciate it.